All right, let's talk a little bit about midpoint. Starting with some vocabulary. Our midpoint of a line segment definition is the midpoint of a segment is a point that divides the segment into two congruent segments. So here's our line segment. AC and B is our midpoint. And remember, when we are showing that two things are the same or congruent, we mark them with a little dash. A couple more vocabulary words. Our segment bisector is a segment, line, or plane. That's not supposed to say plant. Plane that intersects the segment at its midpoint. So we've got our segment AC and the midpoint is at B, and this line right here would be our segment bisector. Congruent segments. If two segments have the same length, then they are congruent. And remember, we denote them with the two little dashes. All right, so let's put these into practice. Like I've already said. So given our lines up here and points, point B is the midpoint of our line segment AC, and line L is a segment bisector of AC because it crosses at its midpoint of B. All right, let's look at some examples. So here we've got our segment PQ, or PR, all the way, and Q is the midpoint. That means that PQ and QR are the exact same distance. So this gives PQ as 7x minus 16 and QR 4x minus 2. The question says that if that Q is the midpoint of our PR, then find the value of x. Since these two parts are the same, we can set our equations equal to each other because they are the exact same length. 7x minus 16 equals 4x plus 2. And then we can solve, of course, by getting x on one side. I like to make my x's positive numbers. So I always take the smaller x from the bigger x. So we got 3x minus 16 equals 2. Add our 16 on both sides to give us 3x equals 18. Finally, getting x by itself by dividing it all by 3, and x equals 6. Make sure when you're answering these questions, you are answering the actual question. It said find the value of x. Did we find the value of x? X equals 6. Yes, now you're done. All right, here's our line segment GI. We can see that the two segments are congruent, so H is its midpoint. If H is the midpoint of line GI, find GH. So again, the midpoint, these two segments are congruent, so we can set our equations equal to each other, solve for x. Go back to the question, it doesn't ask for x, it asks for the length of GH, so then we're going to have to plug in x. Again, going through our Algebra 1 skills, getting x on one side by itself. So again, I want to make x positive by subtracting the smaller one from the bigger one. So we've got 2 equals 4x minus 10. Add 10 on both sides. 12 equals 4x. Get x by itself by dividing by 4. So 3 equals x. It didn't ask us what x was. It asked us to actually find the distance. So let's take what GH is, 5x plus 2, and plug in our x of 3, and solve 15 plus 2, 17. If GH is 17, then HI also has to be 17.